What's going on, guys? It's Jack with Jack Banks MMA, and today we are looking at UFC 280 main card betting ideas. Alright, so we've got some good news and some bad news. So we're going to start off with the good news, which is that UFC 280 is only, depending on when you're watching this video, a couple of weeks away or maybe a week away. So we're finally getting there. The bad news is that the lines for this fight have been up for months, and in my opinion now are, for the most part, in places where it's hard to get value. But we're going to try to find a couple of spots in today's video on the main card for UFC 280. And with that, we're going to start with the main event of Charles Oliveira taking on Islam Makhachev. And man, this is a fight that's been talked about for a long time. You guys have heard plenty about the fight from other people, and I'm sure you've done your own research just because we've been waiting for, it seems like a year. I know it's only been months, but it seems like much longer than that. So, start off, I have the fight capped as Makhachev minus 150, Oliveira plus 125, plus 130. So I think Makhachev gets this done 60% of the time. Now, am I confident with that prediction? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Makhachev is not taking on, obviously everyone said this, the same caliber of competition as Oliveira. I do think Makhachev's defensive striking is going to be a key here. Also, I think, the wrestling ability, obviously, that he has, the pure grappling ability and the ability to hold down a guy like Oliveira is going to be important. But I really don't know how this plays out. I'm not going to be betting it, most likely. The only play I'm thinking about here is fight not goes the distance, which I think right now is like minus 500 or something. And I thought, 80% of the time this fight probably doesn't go the distance. Oliveira is kill or be killed, and lately he's been doing the killing. So I really think the way to play this fight, in my opinion, would have been to get Oliveira early. I think he started off around like plus 200, and then he's come down quite a bit since then. Even if you're able to get plus 170 or above, I think that would have been a really good value play. Now he's somewhere around plus 130, plus 140. I don't think the value is quite as good. So for me, I'm going to pass and really just enjoy the main event. I think it's going to be a ton of fun no matter how long it lasts. Next up is Aljamain Sterling taking on TJ Dillashaw. I think this is a very interesting fight for a number of reasons. The first off is that as a New Yorker, I know I have the Red Sox stuff above me here, but I was really upset with myself that I didn't play Aljo in his last matchup against Jan. I kind of followed the crowd a little bit too much on that one and really didn't appreciate some of the gifts that Aljo was bringing into that fight against Jan, who previously, his takedown defense had been really good, but he hadn't seen the same caliber of grappler as an Aljamain Sterling. And now, with that being said, I think TJ Dillashaw has a decent chance in this fight, and I hate to say that. I really want Aljo to win. I'm a big fan of Aljo the person. And Dillashaw, it's hard for me to get behind a guy who got caught with steroids as TJ did. Now, with that being said, objectively, looking at the fight, I think this is, in some ways, a more difficult fight for Aljamain Sterling than the Peter Yan fight. The reason for that is I think Dillashaw has better grappling and will do a better job of getting out of some of the difficult positions that Aljo was able to get Yan in. And I think on the feet, while he's not, the Terminator that Jan is, I think Dillashaw's footwork and his ability to get in and out will help him actually negate some of the pressure that Sterling's going to bring, and could help him stay on the feet and kind of help him win rounds, right? Also, we've seen Dillashaw kind of work in his own grappling. We saw that especially against Sandhagen. And do I think it's something he's going to look to do a ton in this fight? I don't think it's the wisest idea. That's where Sterling wants to be. But I think at certain times when the pressure is maybe a bit too much from Aljo, he'll look to maybe get a takedown and then kind of reset from there. Could that be a flaw? Potentially. But I think Dillashaw has a better path to victory here than I think the odds are suggesting. Right now, he's, Aljamain Sterling somewhere around minus 170, depending on what book you're looking at, and you've got Dillashaw coming back plus 140. I think Aljo should be, closer to a minus 135, minus 140 favorite. Dillashaw coming back at plus 115, plus 120. So I do think there's a bit of value on the Dillashaw side here. I haven't gotten myself to place a bet there yet, but it is something that, as I get closer to the fight, I might look to do as a value play. Speaking of value plays, we have Peter Yan taking on Sean O'Malley. Now, this fight, when it was initially announced, a lot of people, including myself, were quite surprised that this fight was even put together. Peter Yan was coming off of a championship loss that was incredibly close, and Sean O'Malley was coming off of a no contest against Pedro Munoz, where the fight, never really got going. You could really make an argument Munoz won that first round. It was very close. I know some people had O'Malley, but still, it's hard to justify such a big leap in competition for O'Malley after that fight. Now, there's obviously some caveats to that being, Peter Yan was really, besides, I believe, Rob Font, the only guy in the top 10 who didn't have a matchup. And Rob Font needed to take some time off after his last two fights, understandably so. So, if O'Malley wanted to go up in the rankings, be active, this was the only guy available. Credit to Peter Yan for taking the fight, because there's not much for him to gain here. And the odds came out, and really early on, Peter Yan was a huge favorite, over minus 400. Since then, the odds have come down slowly. And I think that's justified. At first, my initial gut reaction before I watched the tape was, Peter Yan gets this done, no question about it. But after watching the tape, thinking about the fight a little bit, letting it marinate, this is going to be, number one, we know it's going to be a striking affair unless Peter Yan, gets a trip or something, which could happen, but I don't see it being so likely, and then ending up in top position. So I don't see Yan looking for takedowns. So with that being said, guys, I have Yan winning this fight, but the odds, I think, should be, Yan minus 250, O'Malley plus 210. For that reason, I took a little bit of a stab at O'Malley plus, I believe at the time, 285. I was kind of upset with myself. I could have got it at plus 300 and didn't. I think now you can still get it plus 275. I still think that makes sense as a value play. Just with the reach advantage O'Malley's going to have, I think he may also have a quickness advantage with his feet. Hands, I think it's very close, but I think O'Malley's feet might be quicker than Yan's. He's more not necessarily plotting, but he's more grounded where he moves, whereas O'Malley, he likes to be more on his toes and move around. The bet that I will be looking to parlay, though, for sure, is that this fight goes over 1.5 rounds. I think 2.5 gets a little dicey, but if you can get 1.5 alternate somewhere and parlay that with another fight or prop that you like, I think that makes a ton of sense. Next up is Mateusz Gamrad taking on Beneil Dariush. First off, I think the odds on this fight are about right. Right now, you guys, I'm sure have seen Gamrad is around minus 200, Dariush plus 170. I have Gamrad minus 175, Dariush plus 150. So I think there's a little bit of value on Dariush. I think, the last fight for Gamrad was absolutely insane. It was a pleasure to go back and rewatch his fight against Arman Tsarukyan. I still think Tsarukyan won that fight, but on the rewatch, it was closer than I remembered it being. So I have to give credit to Gamrad. I also have to recognize, Gamrad's 5-round ability was definitely a big factor. He won round 5 and I think he won round 3. I still think that spinning back fist from Tsarukyan to get the knockdown in round 4 should have given him round 4. But I digress. This is about Gamrad versus Dariush. I think Dariush is incredibly durable and underrated. So for that reason, I think the over 1.5 here. Now I have it kept as minus 233 or so, and over 2.5 even. I think minus 150. So on a percentage basis, I think it goes over 1.5 about 75% of the time, and then over 2.5 60% of the time. So I think both of those make sense as plays. And if you're looking to play a side, I certainly understand people going with Gamrad. He's the new guy. Dariush, Gamrad has been more active than Dariush, and you can make the argument that maybe Dariush is coming towards the end of his career, but I think this is the biggest opportunity of Dariush's career to get himself a title fight. I don't think he'll get it, but I do think in his mind there's a chance if he wins this fight he will get a title fight, and so I think Dariush is coming in with a lot to play for, whereas Gamrad I think he knows it. He still has a fight or two after this before getting up to a title bout. So I will probably pass, but if the line moves any more up on Dariush, if he's plus 180, plus 190, I really think I will be looking to add Dariush as a value play. Last fight on the main card is Katlyn Chookagian taking on Manon Fiorot. And this is a very, very cool matchup in my opinion because they're very similar. I think Fiorot has more power, but if you take that away, I think they're both, they both like to kickbox. They both have more grappling ability than necessarily given credit for on the surface level. Chookagian has much more experience though, and I think she's being a little bit underrated because of that fact. So I think Fiorot should be the favorite. It's justifiable, but I think a little bit less than what the odds are now. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there's not a ton of value just because these odds have been up for a while now. So I think Fiorot should be, minus 150 to Chookagian, plus 125, plus 130, somewhere in there. So if you're thinking about taking a stab on Chookagian with the value there, I certainly can get behind that. And similar to the last couple fights, I think this goes over 1.5 for sure, 80% of the time, minus 400. So if you're looking to parlay that, over 2.5, I still think probably makes sense, minus 175 or so. This is a women's MMA bout, so it's more likely to go over. I think they're very closely being matched here. And so I do think over 2.5 is likely. As a prop, it might be something I look to play, but let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear if you guys have any real confident picks for the main card at UFC 280 that I could look to tail, because for me, I've noticed my strengths have been more on these fight nights with some of the lesser known fighters where I can get better value on some of the odds. So if you guys have any confidence here, I'd love to hear why and what your reasoning is in the comments below. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next week. Peace.